Hello everyone. In this lecture I'm going to focus on certain features of Wuthering Heights as an introductory lecture, moving from the publication facts about the novel and the division of the novel, then the themes of love and revenge, then the narrative technique concerning the two narrators. Starting with the publication, Wuthering Heights was published in 1847 under the pseudonym of Ellis Bell, the name for Emily Bronte. Emily Bronte probably began writing this novel towards the end of the 1845, though it is possible that she may have conceived the story earlier. Wuthering Heights was completed by the summer of 1846, and in summer 1847 a publisher by the name of Thomas Cotley Newby agreed to publish it. According to the publisher's contract with Emily Bronte, Emily Bronte here had to pay a certain amount of money towards the expenses of the publication. The early reviews of this novel were a mixture of approval and disapproval. More than one commentator expressed in the same breath his condemnation of the subject matter of this novel and his recognition of its originality and genius. Others disapprove the novel just because of the boorish and harshness of the subject that Emily Bronte was employing throughout the novel, the theme of love and the theme of revenge. Now, the story is divided, in fact, into two parts. And in each part, we are talking about a particular family. So, Wuthering Heights is a story of two families and an intruder. The two families are the Earnshaw family, living at a place called Wuthering Heights, and the Linton family, residing at a place called Thrushcross Grange, which is situated in the valley at a distance of about 4 miles from Wuthering Heights, which is situated on a hill. The two residences or abodes are separated from each other by moors and hills. At a small distance from Thrushcross Grange lies the village of the Gimmerton with its church. The story covers almost 3 generations. Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw, living at Wuthering Heights, have 2 children, Hindley and Kathy. Mr. and Mrs. Linton, living at Thrushcross Grange, have likewise 2 children, Edgar and Isabella. Subsequently, after their respective marriage, Hindley Earnshaw begets a son who is named Hareton, while Kathy gives birth to a girl who is also named Catherine. Isabella, the daughter of the Lintons, marries the outsider, the intruder, whose name is Heathcliff. Now, out of this marriage is born a son who gets the name Linton. At the close of the novel, Hareton and the younger Catherine are preparing to get married. So it is in this way that the novel deals with the 3 generations. So the story is divisible into 2 parts. The first part deals with the love of Kathy and the intruder, Heathcliff. And Heathcliff was picked up as an orphan by Mr. Earnshaw from Liverpool slum and brought to Wuthering Heights, where after having lived for a few years, he disappeared and came back to Wuthering Heights after an interval of 3 years. Kathy and Heathcliff had fallen in love with each other, but as Kathy had decided to marry Edgar Linton, even though she was in love with Heathcliff didn't think it right to stay at Wuthering Heights. 3 years after his disappearance, when he returns to Wuthering Heights, he is a changed man, polished and very rich. His love for Kathy is as strong and intense now as it was before, and Kathy too is as deeply in love with him now as she was originally in love with him before. Kathy would like to remain married to Edgar, but she would also like to retain Heathcliff as a friend or a lover, a position which is not acceptable to the decent and self-respecting Edgar. After the first few visits to Thrushcross Grange, Heathcliff is forbidden by Edgar to visit his residence to meet Kathy. In response, Kathy is greatly distressed by Edgar's attitude and she falls seriously ill. Heathcliff pays a secret visit to Cathy through the help of the housekeeper Nellie, and there is a passionate scene between the lovers. The same night, Cathy dies, giving birth to a child whose name is Catherine. The second part of the novel deals with the growth of love between Catherine and Hareton. Hareton is a crude and uneducated fellow who is in the beginning held in contempt by Catherine because she is a refined and elegant girl. Catherine is first married to Linton, the son of Isabella and Heathcliff, but she soon becomes a widow, and thereafter she feels drawn towards Hareton. Towards the close of the novel, the two have decided to get married, a development which is warmly welcomed by the housekeeper, Nellie. Now let's move to talk about one of the most important themes in the novel, which is the theme of love and the theme of revenge. In Wuthering Heights, the love and revenge may be stated as Heathcliff's love for Catherine and revenge he takes upon various persons. The revenge being prompted by the frustration of his love and by the social contempt heaped upon him by Hindley Earnshaw and Edgar Linton. When Heathcliff was brought to Wuthering Heights as a dirty, ragged orphan in order to brought up there, Hindley began to adopt a superior attitude towards the boy. When Hindley became the master of Wuthering Heights on the death of his father, he further degraded Heathcliff by his ill treatment and by making him work on the farm like any other servant. This degradation of Heathcliff made it impossible for Cathy to marry him, even though she told Nellie that her love for him was eternal like the rocks. Heathcliff had vowed revenge upon Hindley for that degradation and callous treatment. We move to Edgar. What's the problem with Edgar? Edgar Linton too had been in those days scornful of Heathcliff. Subsequently, when Heathcliff returns as a rich man, Edgar still refuses to treat him on terms of equality, so that Heathcliff is filled with bitterness against him also. Besides, Edgar is his rival in love, a successful rival because Cathy has married Edgar in preference to Heathcliff. Heathcliff's revenge upon Hindley and Edgar takes a terrible form. Hindley becomes utterly bankrupt on account of his chronic heavy drinking and gambling, and his whole estate becomes mortgaged to Heathcliff, who on Hindley's death becomes the master of Wuthering Heights. Then Heathcliff becomes the master of Thrushcross Grange also because he uses both cunning and coercion in effecting the marriage of his son Linton with the younger Catherine, who inherits the property of Thrushcross Grange on the death of her father, Edgar Linton. Another way in which he takes revenge upon Hindley is to bring up Hindley's son Hareton to brute, depriving the lad of all opportunities of education and refinement. So Heathcliff is now in a position to wreck the lives of both Hareton and Catherine, the descendants of the Earnshaw family and the Linton family respectively. But he has had enough of revenge, and the vindictive spirit in him subsides. He is now obsessed with thoughts of the dead Cathy, and when he ultimately dies in strange circumstances, it is believed that he has been united with Cathy, because several persons have seen the ghosts of the two lovers roaming on the moors at night. Now let's talk about the two narrators employed by Emily Bronte to render the story. The novel employs a most original technique of narration. We have two narrators in the book, Lockwood and Nellie. Lockwood is a city dweller who comes to Thrushcross Grange as a tenant to spend a year or so in the countryside. He meets his landlord, Heathcliff, who is living at Wuthering Heights. And Lockwood's curiosity about the inmates of Wuthering Heights is aroused, especially because of two strange dreams which he sees in his sleep when he is compelled by circumstances to spend the night at Wuthering Heights. Lockwood then asks Nellie, the housekeeper at Thrushcross Grange, if she knows anything about the inmates of Wuthering Heights. Nellie knows all about them and about other members of the two families who are no more in this world. And she, in compliance with Lockwood's request, begins to tell him the story of the two families and the outsider, Heathcliff. Lockwood then becomes Nellie's audience for the story, and we too are the audience along with Lockwood. Towards the end of the novel, Lockwood once again becomes the narrator, and the circumstances of Heathcliff's death are related to Lockwood by Nellie. The novel ends with Lockwood as the narrator, just as it began with Lockwood as the narrator. And in short, while there are two narrators, the major portion of the story, the entire history of the two families, is narrated by Nellie. While Lockwood is completely detached, Nellie is an active participant in the action. Even she tries to give an objective account of events and happenings.